Hello everyone, and welcome to Rayfield Virtual Music Class. Today I want to break down to you the basics of music theory. We're going to break it down into 4 different lessons, the first being tempo, the second being the notes in the song, the third being our scales, and the fourth being our chords. So we have tempo, we have notes, scales, and chords. Let's get started with tempo. The tempo is how fast or how slow your song is. This can be determined at the beginning of your music. Sometimes at the top of your music, you'll see what's called the beats per measure, and it'll have a number next to it. That number will determine how many beats are in the measure and how fast or slow your song is. Most times, commonly, you will see at the beginning of your music a fraction. The most common fraction you're going to see is going to be 4/4. 4/4 being our common fraction is going to let us know 2 different things. The top number is going to indicate how many beats are in the measure, and that bottom number is going to tell us exactly what kind of note equals 1 beat. Okay, so if your top number is 4, if we're looking at 4/4, the top number is 4. That means there's going to be 4 beats per measure. And the bottom number being 4 means that we're going to use quarter notes in order to get to those 4 beats. So if we were looking at 4/8, it means that we would use 1/8 notes. 4/2 would mean half notes. And every now and then you may see 4/1, which is a whole note. So now that we've determined how fast our song is going to go, we're going to look right next to what indicates our tempo. Right next to that fraction, most commonly, you're going to see what's called a key signature. Your key signature is going to let you know what key your song is in. What key your song is in is very important to you because you don't want to be what's called off key. You always want to use the notes that are in the key. This is determined by your key signature. If you do not see what looks like a key signature, it is still one there. It is the most common one, and it is known as C major. It can also be known as A minor. C major and A minor have no sharps and no flats. So in the language of music, our first note is known as C. And we only use 7 of the letters. So in order to give you the different notes in the key signature of C, that means we're going to use C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, right back to C. This is known as a scale. And we know the notes in the scale because of our key signature. Things in music go hand in hand, so one can help you determine the other. We know how fast the song is, we know what key the song is in, and now we know what notes are used in that key. So to give you another example, there is G major and E minor. Both of them have 1 sharp. A sharp means to augment the note. A flat means to lower the note or diminish the note. So again, G major means that we're going to start on the root note of G. Remember when it was C major, we started on the root note of C. So in G major, you're going to have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, because our key signature has 1 sharp in G major and it's on the F. If we moved on to 2 sharps, of course, we can make our way all the way to 7 sharps. 2 sharps would be D major or B minor, And that's going to change the notes when we look at the scale. So those two augmented notes are going to be F sharp as well as C sharp. So we start on the root, which is D major or D. We move up to E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and then D. The notes between your notes are known as semitones or half steps. Most commonly, you're going to see this example on a piano. When you're looking at a piano and you start at C, you're going to see D sharp, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then C. This is how you move up by half steps, or what's also known as semitones. So when you hear someone say, go up a half step or go a whole step, you understand what it is that they're speaking about. So a whole step is nothing more than two half steps. Two halves make a whole. Two semitones determine what your whole step is going to be. So now that we have our scales, of course there are different scales or so many scales. We're almost ready to move on to chords, but if you haven't realized, we've skipped notes altogether. So let's go back and talk about notes. Now that we know so far our tempo, we know our key signature, and we know our key signature is going to determine what key we're in. That lets us know our root note. That lets us know what notes are going to be in the scale in the song that we're singing. And we're almost ready to move on to chords, but I would like to talk about the value of our notes. So notes, even though we use letters for notes, we also have to know the tempo of our notes. And that is determined, again, going back to the more mathematical terms of quarter note, half note, whole note. There's also, of course, dotted notes, and there's what's known as the eighth note, the 16th note, even as it goes as fast as a 30-second note. And these are just going to determine your different tempos. So your quarter note is going to be equal to 1 beat. Your half note is going to be 2 beats. A dotted half note, a dotted note means to take the amount of the note, cut it in half, and add it to the value of the note. So if a half note is equal to 2, half of 2 is 1, we add that to the 2. A dotted half note has a value of 3. Moving on, a whole note has a value of 4. And maybe we should have started, but we'll end with the eighth note, which has a value of 1/2. These notes also have rests that are equivalent to them. So just as well as you have the quarter note, you have the quarter rest. Half note, half rest. The same thing works for the dot. If you see a dotted half rest, then you know to give that the value of 3 notes and not 2. They have the whole rest as well as the eighth rest. So on and so forth. The more flags you see on that eighth rest, it's going to turn into a 16th and a 32nd. So now, normally with learning the value of notes, especially in the classes that I've had, I'm known to give a pattern. I'll give you a 4/4 measure, I'll give you out a series of notes, and we'll clap along. So when you see a quarter note, you know to give it one clap. And when you see a half note, you know to give it a clap and, because it's worth the value of 2, so on and so forth. So now that we know our tempo, we know our key from our key signature, as well as the notes that we're looking at, we're going to want to understand harmonies, better known as chords. Chords are normally 3 notes that are played simultaneously, 3 notes that are going to be played together, and it gives you the sound of a chord. Chords are normally created by your root note, going up 2 semitones to the 3rd, and 2 more to the 5th note of that chord or that scale. So knowing your scales, that's why we did scales first, is going to help you understand your chord. You take the root of your chord, your 3rd, and your 5th, and you have your chord. Okay, I can get more into chords, but what I'm going to do is show you several different scales as well as several different chords so that you can see the differences between them. Eventually, once you start to understand major chords and minor chords, you're going to understand that they're assigned a number. Okay, but let's talk about major and minor. Major is going to have a happy sound, what's known as a happy sound, and minor is usually known to have more of a sad sound. So again, once you hear these different chords, again, of course, the most easiest is going to be your C chord, no sharps, no flats. It's very happy, gives you very happy tone. That's known as 1, okay? So in C major, your C major is known as 1. And then you're going to move on, so forth, to being D minor, 3, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major are going to be your 1 through 8. Now, normally in the basics of music theory, you're going to use the first 6. And of course, there are all types of combinations that you can use with those 6. One of the more commons are 1, 4, 5. There are other variations of 2, 4, 5 that have been used a lot lately in a lot of the music that you listen to today. If you hear a 2, 4, 5, you can more than likely recognize it in a song or two. And that's going to be your homework assignment today, is to listen to some different songs and see what you can identify. See what notes you can identify. See where the chords are. See where your scales are. What notes were used? What scale did they use? What chord did they use? How fast is the song? And that's just how you practice music. Music is fun. Even when you're practicing music theory, even when you're learning music theory, you can listen to your favorite song, break the things down that you like about your song, and it helps you understand it more. Okay, one last lesson I want to give you guys, just for my more advanced students, is to let you know that, when you see or hear a song, a lot of times it's going to be made up of several different parts, okay? And you're going to have your chords in there. And sometimes your chords can be broken up because you have your melody, okay? A lot of people like to play with the higher notes, of course, but then There's a lot of fun when it comes to your lower notes because a lot of the hip hop fans like to use what's called 808s. And you can't just throw an 808 in there. Your 808 has to be assigned a note value, C to C somewhere, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Your 808 is going to have a value. So if your bass note is C, then you're more than likely going to need the other notes in that C chord. Yeah? You're going to need an E somewhere. You're going to need a G somewhere in the melody, somewhere in the higher register. So a lot of times when you're making songs, you're going to have your chords. You're going to have your drums, of course. That's everybody's favorite part. A lot of people's favorite part is the drums. And again, like I say, you're going to have your melody. You're going to have your bass. Okay? And these are things that I want you to readily identify when you listen to music. I want you to hear what they play first. Do they play the chords first? Do they just come in with the drum beat? A lot of times it's organized and you balance and take things in and out. So you start with your chords, you eventually slowly bring in your drum beat, and of course everybody loves it when the bass drops. Okay, so I want you guys to listen to music and be able to identify these things. I know right now we're in a time where we don't get to see a lot of musical performances, but if you're online and you see a musical performance, what instruments are they using? Okay, a lot of times you're going to see a piano, you're going to see drums, you're going to see a guitar. Maybe you'll see some brass instruments. And I want you to recognize the different sounds. I want you to recognize the different chords, the different scales, and better understand music. Most people love music, but most people don't understand it. And I want our class, our choir, to be able to readily identify a C chord when they hear it, to identify a C scale, so on and so forth, because we're being awesome in August. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak to you today and teach you a few things about theory and music theory, because I know we all love music. You guys have a great day.